Our next speaker is Aaron Ross. Aaron is the #1 best-selling author of Predictable Revenue. Turn your business into a sales machine with the $100 million best practices of Salesforce.com. Called by Inc.com the sales Bible of Silicon Valley. Aaron worked at Salesforce.com where he created a cold calling 2.0 system that helped increase Salesforce.com's revenues by $100 million. Aaron graduated from Stanford University, is married, and keeps his work to 25 hours a week. Lucky man. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Aaron Ross.
Hey, it's Aaron Ross, and I'm here to talk to you today about how CEOs break revenue plateaus. Now, if you haven't heard of me, I'm the author of this best-selling book called Predictable Revenue. It's been actually bestseller for a few years now and called by many the sales Bible of Silicon Valley. Now, a bunch of the book was based on my experience from Salesforce.com when I worked there, helping create a $100 million outbound sales program. And after I left Salesforce, I've helped many other companies do similar things. I have 6 kids today. We're actually expecting another 3, this time through adoption this year. So yeah, we could be at 9 kids this year, which is a bit funny to say. And another fun fact is I've kept this sort of 25 to 30-hour work week for several years now, even though I do need to work. That $100 million wasn't mine, it's Salesforce's. But I find if I work more than that, I guess I just sort of lose some of the breakthrough ideas I feel like I get when I work less. Anyway, we love kids, I love kids, and you'll see how that's related to this breaking through a plateau. Lots of kids. And I like to bring them into my work when I can. I find it's fun for them and fun for me. So everybody plateaus. So getting to the point of today, we all get into a rut in some way, whether it's through body, weight, love, or money. Now, I broke through a big plateau because about 5 years ago, I was single. I didn't make a lot of, I made, let's say, between $50,000 to $100,000 a year because that's all I really needed. Didn't have many expenses. But then I got married, and I had a lot of kids, and I needed to make a lot more money, so I focused and I grew my income 10 times. Although my expenses grew about that or maybe more, but the point is I broke through a plateau, and I've seen also with clients I've worked with, these B2B companies, is something similar. Sometimes they've got something, they want to grow. Sometimes they do in a big way, 10 times, $100 million plus. Sometimes they flounder. What's the difference? Well, I've got some painful truths to share with you. And this first one is, it's not them, it's you. Like, for real. I know in romance novels or TV, they'll say, it's not you, it's me, but it actually really is. So if you're at a company and you find that your sales churn, or the number of salespeople leaving per year, whether they're fired or whether they quit, is more than 10% of the team, so if you're losing more than 10 out of 100 per year, or you're regularly missing your goals in some way, it's probably not them. It's probably not the salespeople's fault. We like to blame them. Right? It's the system that's the problem, not the people. Right? So first we want to look at what's the system. What's wrong with that? Second painful truth is that without drowning, you're probably not going to hit escape velocity. Now, we're creatures of habit as humans, which also means that companies are creatures of habit because we're groups of humans. And comfort is the enemy of growth because growth requires change. If you need more growth, it means you need to do something different. But change is work. Change requires motivation. And drastic change requires drastic motivation. So again, I had a drastic change when I got married, had lots of kids. It was a big motivator. So yep, at the point when you want something, whether it's that extra money, or maybe it is to get married, or whatever it is that you want as badly as a drowning person wants air, that's when you might have the level of motivation you need to have that, let's call it success. It's a little bit of a joke there because my nickname's Air. But so what's really going to drive you? What's going to motivate you? Because that, again, if you want big growth, it requires big challenges. And if you don't have that kind of escape velocity motivation to power you through the challenges, you're going to fall back into your old habits. You're going to go back into that rut. There's some of these, a lot of bloggers who believe that you need to be passionate and find your passion, and which I agree with. But in reality, I don't think it really matters whether you found a passion to pull you forward, or you're just ambitious, or you find some sort of pain to push you forward. Either way, as long as that total energy is there to drive the change, it should work. And as part of this, you need to learn how to embrace uncertainty, because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what's going to break you out of the rut, but you just need to go for it. And use this challenge to motivate you, not to avoid change. It's okay to sort of leap into the uncertain, but you got to do something that's different. Here's the third painful truth. Build it and they'll come is a fairy tale. Now, lead generation is your big lever. Even with a perfect product or sales process, you'll struggle without leads. But if you have great leads or a great way to generate them, you can get pretty much everything else wrong and you'll still do well. And the important thing is there's 3 types of leads. Now, I said build it and they'll come as a fairy tale. So, of course, in a fairy tale, we need a princess or 3. And like the 3 types of leads, at our house, we've got 3 types of princesses. They all have their pros and cons, which I won't get into here. But they're all different. All great, but for different reasons. We've got the young girl princess, Cinderella. We've got the grandpa princess, and we've got the little brother princess. Now, I will say, be very careful when your 12-year-old has too much free time, access to makeup, and to princess clothes, because you never know what's going to happen to your little kids around the house. Similarly, the 3 types of leads are all great, but just for different reasons. There's word of mouth, or seeds, so many to many, always the best kind, but they're hard to grow. And then there's nets, marketing, so one to many. Incredible way to get more coverage, but usually get lots of leads, but of less quality. And then spears, outbound prospecting, so one-to-one, when you've got a person and they've got a list and they're going after that list usually through emailing or calling. So they're all great ways to generate leads, but they're all different. And the important thing is knowing which one is the best fit for your business, or what's the right mix for your particular business. So a little bit about seeds. It's about turning your funnel into an hourglass and investing in, I would say, customer success is the main way to proactively grow word of mouth, and treating that as not an expense, but as a revenue investment, as a growth investment. With nets, right, this is a classic marketing funnel. An example one difference between these 3 types of leads is they each have different funnels, different conversion rates, different deal sizes often, and different kinds of expectations. So again, pros and cons for each. And then there's outbound prospecting, right, which is sort of our specialty at Predictable Revenue Inc. And this is I would say a classic outbound prospecting funnel where you're building a targeted list and you're sending a certain number of emails and making a certain number of calls per month, expecting a certain number of appointments and then deals to come from this, which can be a very predictable way to generate qualified leads, which thus means a very predictable way to generate revenue. And in fact, if you want details, there's a lot of details on these 3 types of leads, which I can't get into now. It's a free ebook at predictablerevenue.com/triple. Okay. Now, if you already have an outbound team and you want some of the best apps, or look at some of the best apps out there, there's something called a Predictable Revenue Bundle, which we've got, including our own internal software at Predictable Revenue called carb.io, and that's at predictablerevenuebundle.com. But let's move on to this last painful truth, that you're fooling yourself. Now, hope belongs in movies, not business. Optimism is essential. You can't live without it. But hope kills. To me, hope implies that you're releasing responsibility to the universe, that I hope something happens. And what we want is no surprises. We don't want to rely on hope. This is where I say hope can kill. Now, what's great about a lot of opportunities, like you have this list, and it could be sales opportunities, fundraising opportunities, like it's great because you feel like, well, I've got a lot of opportunity. And I feel momentum. I'm adding to it, and it might actually help me beat my goals because I've got a lot going on. But there's a downside. This is usually what happens to people's opportunity list, which is just total disorganized clutter. And the downside of what's wrong with lots of opportunities is the fact that you can be busy and it feels productive, but it may not be. And it makes it easier to avoid reality, the fact that it's not working. And again, if you're working with different people, if you're spreading yourself too thin, people are going to get worse service from you. Right? So there's a downside to that. So this is another reason to specialize or focus your people. Right? So prospectors prospect, closers close, and so on, right? Which is still the number one thing to do. Because when people have fewer things to be responsible for, it's easier to keep their opportunity list clean and to stay focused on it. And if you're not sure how to specialize your team, and if you Google that salespeople shouldn't prospect, there'll be an article or articles that come up that can walk you through these different roles. But this is the number one thing to do that will make your sales team more effective. Because it's tough. The challenge is brutal honesty can be hard to do. Because when you're talking to a prospect, how often do you actually hear a clear no? You'll hear yes, or later, or maybe, let me get back to you, or send me some information. But rarely do they say no. And it's hard for them because as people, we want approval. And we don't like to be rejected, and we don't like to reject others. It's also sometimes we just don't want to admit that we don't know. And lastly, if we are honest, maybe we'll experience rejection. So practice getting to the difficult truths. That is the core here. And that means that when you know exactly what's not working, gives you the ability to know exactly what to do to break that rut. So your job is to find out the truth or why something's not working, and then help them move on or out. I guess it could apply again to romance. But so if they're not interested, and this could apply to fundraising, prospects, anything, then why aren't they interested now? If you can find out why, because maybe it's not a fit, maybe they don't see the value, maybe it's not the right time, there could be a lot of reasons. Then you can find out what you need to do next. And in order to get to this truth, we want to make it easier for people, for us and for them. Right? So we want to try and remove any kind of guilt in the process. We want to make it honestly easier by giving people easy outs. And in terms of asking hard questions, we want to do it in friendly ways. We don't want to avoid hard questions, but we don't need to ask them in challenging ways that make people defensive. We want to be cooperative and curious with them so we can sort of get to the truth together. Let me give you some examples. Okay, here's challenging versus cooperative. Challenging would be, hey, do you have your CEO's buy-in yet? A little more cooperative would be, what has to happen to wrap things up by month end? Challenging again, hey, is this a priority? Try a little more curious, what else is more important now? Or hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is it to get it done by a certain date? Now you can actually use this with a spouse as well. For example, why aren't we having kids or adopting? It's a little more challenging than, hey, what concerns do you have about adopting or having kids? Or maybe on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is it to have kids or adopt? Right? We're working together. We're not at odds. And our last example, challenging, who's the decision maker? A little more investigative would be, who else is typically involved in deciding something like this? So I mentioned easy outs. Right? We want to give them a friendly challenge to make it easier for them to say that they're not interested. We also call them breakup emails if it's over email. But you could say something like, hey, I'll assume it's not a good time, or it's not a good fit or of interest, etc., unless I hear otherwise. And you get a high response rate with this because you'll see people say, oh yeah, it's not a fit. Because we're making it easy for them to be honest about the no. Now, I would not use these with your spouse. Not a good idea over email. So anyway, the point is, when you can start to see the truth, this painful, especially the painful truth that we're uncomfortable talking about, as delicious, as tasty, it makes it easier, because when we can get to it, and whether this is in love or business, it means we know one way or the other, so are they in or out, right? We can move out of denial and find out, see clearly what's next in order to get to the next level, to move on, right? Versus being unsure or unclear. So, to wrap up, use your challenge to power the change, not avoid it. Like, embrace it. Embrace the uncertainty. Number 2, with seeds, nets, and spears, which one's best for you, or what's the right mix? Because some work for some companies better than others. Specialize your people or time. Right? Prospectors prospect, closers close. And the last one, practice getting to the painfully important truth. Right? Don't dodge the hard questions, whether that's with yourself, with your team, with prospects. So if you have questions, here's how you get a hold of us. I said that free ebook on seeds, nets, and spears is at predictablerevenue.com/triple. And the outbound apps and some training courses and so on, predictablerevenuebundle.com. And I'm Aaron Ross, and I just want to thank you very much